Welcome to the Nurturing Minds podcast,
a science-driven approach to parenting and education.
We are two parents, two scientists, and two people who care deeply about raising kids who are resilient, confident, and happy.
In a world that's becoming increasingly digital, we believe real connection, emotional well-being, and curiosity matter more than ever.
In each episode, we share insights from latest research, our own experiences, and conversations with experts from around the world to help you support the children in your life. I'm Dr. Sonali Dasgupta, a research scientist turned educationist, mentor to talented teenagers, and founder of the STEM Monsters education platform.
And I am Dr. Blanka Kellermayer, neuroscientist, mum of two very active boys, certified parenting coach, and founder of Dr. Blanka Peaceful Parenting. I'm very excited to have Dilyana Karadzhova today with us. Dilyana is an early years educator with a background in childhood and youth studies, early years teaching, and nursery leadership. Her journey with the Pikler approach began after witnessing how slowing down during care routines transformed relationships between adults and children. Dilyana has since completed 4 Pikler trainings, including studying in Budapest, and is now a member of the Pikler UK committee. Dilyana is passionate about fostering respectful, meaningful connections and supporting inclusion for children from diverse backgrounds. So we're very happy to have you on today, and we have a very personal connection as well, because all 3 of us used to work for the same company, and my child actually attended a nursery that was managed by Dilyana. So I know from parenting experience how wonderful this approach is with children. So I'm very excited to learn more about it and share and spread the word with everybody today.
Fantastic. I mean, I kind of probably just missed it, Dilyana, and I've heard so much about your the efficacy with which you managed everything at the nursery at ONI. But yeah, I mean, thank you, Blanka, for that introduction. But I would love to hear it from you, Dilyana. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey till now? And in fact, in particular, how did you get involved with this Pikler approach in your professional journey, not just a kindergarten as such? So why this approach?
First of all, thank you both for this lovely introduction. It's really humbling to hear these words from you, Blanka, as well. And as you know, I have very fond memories of our time together in the nursery. So yes, sincerely, thank you for that. Yes, as you heard, I'm Dilyana, and I would describe myself as a passionate educator. You heard a little bit about my background. I come from Bulgaria, and since I've moved to the UK, I've had a very colorful journey. I started as a nursery assistant, and I worked my way up to nursery leadership, and it has been quite a journey. And I have had various roles throughout the years, but one thing that has never changed is how much I care about children and their learning. My most recent role was to be an early years advisor for migrant families, and I made sure that families from all over the world, including refugees and asylum seekers, can have access to early education and feel included in those first important years of their lives. And as you heard, I'm also part of Pikler UK at the moment, and I feel very passionate about sharing more about the approach with others. In terms of how my journey with Pikler UK started, it started very close to where I live. I live in Oxford in England, and there is a small town called Kidlington here. And it was there where I first found out about the approach, and I saw for myself how slowing down during everyday care routines, like nappy changing and meal times, could truly transform relationships between adults and children. And I noticed calmer, more content children, and that experience really inspired me to learn more. And yes, as you heard, I have completed a few courses, and I'm really looking forward to my next one, which is in June. That will be my 5th course, and it will focus on the beginnings of social learning. It's always very inspiring to witness this firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in a time where AI is taking over, I think social learning needs to be at the forefront of any early childhood education. So, yeah,
Yeah, and it's
fantastic.
so inspiring that you're continuing to learn more and more. I think I always love interacting with people who strive to keep learning, keep that learning going. So can you tell us a little bit about what the Pikler approach is? I'm sure many of our listeners would now like to know some details about what this approach is.
Yes, maybe it would make sense to start from the beginning and to tell you all about the beginnings of this approach. So the approach or philosophy was developed by a Hungarian pediatrician called Dr. Emi Pikler in the mid-20th century. And it is based on the idea that even the youngest children are capable and autonomous individuals who deserve to be treated with respect and trust from birth. This approach was first implemented at the Lotzi Institute in Budapest, where children, many of whom were orphans, thrived in a carefully prepared environment that focused on respectful care, free movement, and secure relationships with consistent adults. And since then, there has been a lot of research, and perhaps later we could dive into this and also talk a little bit about the data and the research behind this approach.
Fantastic. In fact, a lot of our viewers would be may have heard of the more popular philosophies, early childhood philosophies like the Waldorf or the Montessori. So would you shed some light on how is it different from these more popular names that the educators may have heard of? And what are some of the core principles of this approach?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Pikler is not yet mainstream in the UK, so many people haven't heard about it yet. So in terms of the comparison between Pikler and Montessori, you are right. There's some overlapping principles between the two approaches. But while both value autonomy with Montessori environments, they often prepare children in a more structured way. So the focus is on structured learning and independence in practical life skills, while Pikler focuses more on the foundational trust and motor development in infancy. Another comparison could be also between Reggio Emilia and Pikler, because these approaches that, for example, I combined in the setting I managed. And Reggio focuses on this group learning, and there is a strong focus on project learning and expressive arts in a group setting, while Pikler focuses on the individual rhythm of the child and the pace of the individual child. And in comparison to other traditional methods and approaches, the Pikler stands out in its rejection to rushed developmental milestones. So it prioritizes unhurried time and deep attunement and genuine collaboration with the child. So it's genuinely child-led learning. I know a lot of people say that, but I haven't yet.
Not.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. I know where you're coming from. In fact, while you were saying that it starts from infancy, so is there an age group that Pikler is most effective in or should be brought in?
Yes, the reason why I say that is most of the research that was carried out last century and it's still ongoing is for children from birth to the age of 3. So it's that's where we have the data, but the principles that we'll talk about later could be applied for with older children as well. It's not an issue at all.
Interesting.
Okay, wonderful. So when it comes to implementing this approach, what does you also mentioned that you're doing another training. So what does the training process look like for early childhood educators? Like if someone wanted to dive into becoming trained as a Pikler educator, what would the process look like?
Yes, thank you for asking this. It's a very important question. because it's at the heart of the Pikler approach. And it involves a few elements. I will talk briefly about each element. So it involves studying Amy Pikler's work and research. There are practical observations and video analysis, reflective discussions, self-reflection, experiential learning, and hands-on activities. So the first part of the training is about really understanding the research and the data that underpin the approach. So educators learn not only what the principles are, but why they matter. So drawing on decades of developmental research and lived experience at the Pikler Institute. And the basic courses provide this information. There are 3 basic courses that can give you this information. They're quite different from typical ones in the sense that learners are challenged to look at a child's development with deep understanding and compassion. And I've not yet attended any other course that offers the same level of depth when it comes to understanding the child's psyche and development. That's my personal opinion. The second part is about observing care in practice, and this could be done either by watching caregivers directly at the setting in Budapest, or through the Pikler's Institute's video archives. And I highly recommend watching these videos. They are available online. The purpose is to learn how to observe children with a new kind of attentiveness, and educators are taught to look closely without judgment at how the child is in the environment, at what a child is doing, how they move, and how they engage with others. We learn to notice small details in movement, gaze, or gesture, and discuss what these might tell us about the child's intention, emotion, or developmental stage. The third part is probably the most distinctive in my own experience. When you take part in a Pikler course, you can see that the caregivers truly live and breathe the approach. They manage to communicate its values through ongoing dialogue with learners, and that dialogue really encourages you to reflect on your own upbringing, culture, assumptions, and pre-existing knowledge. And this is the hardest part for us adults, accepting that the way you were treated as a child might not have been very respectful, and realizing that you might now be replicating some of those same patterns that with your own children and key children in the setting. And that's also why applying the approach can feel quite therapeutic. And what I mean is, personally, I started to see my own mom in my interactions much more clearly after the training. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. In some ways, it's inevitable to replicate these behavioral models we grew up with. But it's important to be aware of them and to reflect on how they've shaped our own understanding of the child. And 2 important questions that we keep asking ourselves during this process is, do we truly see children as active agents in their learning, or do we see them as subjects of our care, whose time of uninterrupted play is secondary to our own agenda of the day? So overall, I would describe this experience as truly transformative, and a process that helps you grow as a person, not just as a professional.
Oh, that's very beautiful, and I can definitely attest to what you said about the respect and between the different caregivers in a setting, because I definitely felt that, like, interacting with any one of you at the nursery was always like, it felt like therapy for me too. And exactly what you're saying, that we who are more conscious, whether it's a Pikler approach, whether it's peaceful parenting, breaking that cycle that, you know, that we experienced as children is not easy, but it also helps you come to terms with what your experience was and how you intentionally want to make a difference.
Yes, I believe it's important to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a process, isn't it?
And we're not saying that our parents didn't do a good job here, because they absolutely did their best. It's just we have more knowledge now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, I really love To be fair, I did not know much about Pikler approach before we decided to have a conversation with you because of how interesting it sounded. And there are so many things which are embedded in the approach. And I thought, oh, this is obvious, but it's
Mm.
not. And you're so right in saying that we need to do it intentionally with intent to be able to actually absorb it and imbibe it. So, in fact, one of the things that Pikler approach is known for, as you very rightly said, is the respectful care routines, not just care routines, being respectful of the child as a being. And the other which stuck with me was pausing, not being hurried, because the society, the world is just rushing. And I was talking to Blanka before you joined the meeting, and I was saying that we are always rushing, and it is so important that even at that early childhood stage, there is a way where consciously caregivers can actually not rush through the milestones, not rush through the routines, not rush through the chores. So, what I wanted to understand from you was, are there are these everyday moments like nappy changing, meal times, doing something which is not hurried up, playtime, unstructured playtime? I mean, they must be important for in the long term for the child's development, right? So, how do you see, or where do you see the maximal impact that these routines at an early stage has on a child in the long term?
Yes, absolutely. You're so right. And in the Pikler approach, these so-called everyday care routines are not just important, they're central to a child's long-term development. And what might seem like a simple task, like nappy changing, as you said, dressing, feeding, are actually very powerful opportunities for relationship building, emotional development, and the formation of self-identity. And why they're so important? Because they're these relational rituals, or like it's like a dance between the adult and the child. And they're moments where trust, respect, and emotional security are built moment by moment every day.
True.
And respectful care routines communicate a deep sense of safety uh, to the child, which allows the child to explore the environment confidently and skillfully. And during these times, the child is invited to participate actively. So what this could look like in practice is, for example, you would ask the child to lift their legs. You wouldn't lift their legs for them. You would ask them to choose between two bibs, or to wipe their own hands, not wipe it for them. You would also ask them to anticipate and understand what's coming by describing the routine and the next step. And the children will be spoken to and listened to. And this approach helps the child develop a sense of agency. So even before they can walk or talk, and this is very important, children are learning that I can influence what happens to me. So you would talk to a newborn in a way that you would talk perhaps in other approaches to an older child. You would explain everything that you're doing to them or with them. The Pikler approach also deeply supports cognitive, social, and language development. And the adult's role is not to instruct, but to observe, listen, and build on what the child already
On
knows.
that.
Yes. And for example, let's say a child builds an elaborate tower in the morning. During the nappy changing routine, the adult could offer a warm, thoughtful comment on what they saw in the morning. And by acknowledging the child's effort and what they did, they're also showing the child that they're seen and they're heard, but they're also strengthening language and communication. They're reinforcing concepts of shape, design, pattern, balance, and quantity, and they're deepening the child's memory and reflective thinking. And very briefly about gestures, because they're also very important in this approach. By being handled gently, hence are very important when we think about Pikler and our caregiving, and thinking about our verbal communication, asking for consent before we touch the child, we instill this bodily autonomy, and this helps the child form a respectful relationship with their own body. I personally believe this is very important.
Yeah.
It's always been important, but especially I think nowadays with young girls and boys, consent is paramount.
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, go
Yeah.
ahead, please, Blanka.
No, I love everything that you mentioned, and you briefly touched upon the social, emotional, and cognitive development. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on these a little bit, on how the Pikler approach actually, what's the impact that the Pikler approach has on these different developmental areas?
Yes, I think that's also very important, and they stem from the principles I mentioned, or I touched on earlier. So socially, children who grow up in an environment where they feel their feelings and needs, regardless of what they are validated and seen, where adults firmly believe in their good nature and intentions and instill resilience and problem-solving skills, can learn how to be at peace not only with themselves, but also with another. And to achieve this, caregivers need to do a few things, I think. Treat children as partners who seek connection, not power. And also facilitate dialogue where needs and interests of all parties involved are acknowledged and validated without creating unnecessary power imbalances. So with regards to the first point, to educate children who are in peace with themselves and one another, we need to see them as individuals who have the need to build meaningful and warm relationships with the adults first and then with each other. And during care routines, adults need to treat children as partners, which teaches them to listen and wait for their turn, to cooperate in shared tasks, and to expect respectful treatment and offer in return. I sometimes see practitioners or caregivers who try to be perhaps too helpful and intervene when a conflict arises. And they might say things like, oh, you give the ball back now and play with something else. But I urge caregivers to observe what happens next after this intervention. I think this is a very helpful exercise. Children often separate, they don't play with each other anymore, so the relationship is broken. And this kind of approach might reinforce power imbalances in the group. On the other hand, if the adult facilitates a dialogue by allowing both perspectives of a conflict to be acknowledged, recognized, and validated, it often leads to a stronger relationship. And yes, children's conflict in play, I think, isn't about winning a toy. It's about learning how my interests and needs can coexist with somebody else's. And regards to the emotional development, due to this respectful, predictable, and consistent care, children grow up with a deep sense of emotional security. And I briefly want to describe a photograph which can be found in a book called What Can the Baby Already Do? This book was written in 1946, but actually sounds very modern nowadays. It's written by Amy Pikler, and the photographs are taken by Marian Reisman. And there is a photo there of a child who is lying on his tummy, having positioned himself softly and comfortably on a wooden platform covered only with a flannel blanket. And even though the surface is hard, the child looks completely at ease. He doesn't look defeated after a power struggle with a caregiver. And when we look at this photograph, we can almost feel the child's peace to let go of the visible world and enter this realm of sleep, the unknown. The infant needs to feel in harmony with themselves and with the world around them. And this sense of calm and inner security is only possible when adults create a trustful, respectful, and predictable environment. And moreover, because the routines are not in a Pikler setting, are not rushed or intrusive, children learn to trust not only the adults who care for them, but also their own feelings and bodily cues. And they follow them. And these are children who aren't coerced in cooperation. They choose it because it feels good to be part of such a warm relationship. Cognitively, I think it's already clear by now, or perhaps you kind of get a feeling about this, how there is a rich cognitive development when we apply this approach, but it unfolds through self-initiated activity and deep engagement with the environment. So free movement supports spatial awareness, problem solving, and planning. Uninterrupted play fosters concentration, persistence, and decision making. And because adults observe rather than direct, children are free to follow their own interests, which is crucial for intrinsic motivation. And this approach supports what we might call slow learning, but not in the sense of delay, but of depth. And children explore ideas fully and make meaning for themselves rather than being hurried from one milestone to another. Children are not pushed to achieve, but they're supported to discover. So in summary, the approach doesn't promise faster walkers or early talkers. What it nurtures is something deeper and longer lasting. Emotionally resilient children, socially respectful children, and cognitively engaged human beings.
Fantastic. I loved it. I think as she was speaking out on the benefits on the 3 different criteria, and I was thinking to myself, children don't start actually playing in a group until they are 3 or so, because up until then they're just playing by themselves and they don't have the social skills to engage and interact with another child. And where this conversation that you have with a child while doing any regular day-to-day activity, I can vouch for it. The way children start taking it in, assimilating it, and once they reach that milestone of being able to connect with somebody else in a group, when they start the group play at 4 years, 5 years, because until then they don't know, those things actually follow up on what they have assimilated in those first 3 years. So, I mean, what you mentioned about having a conversation and not rushing from one task to the other, but letting the child grow at their own pace is just so powerful, and unfortunately keeps getting ignored many a times because we have this timeline of finishing things, not just as educators, but also expecting the children to finish at a certain time. So thank you for elaborating on that.
It is
Yes.
extremely powerful. And there is, sorry to interrupt you, Blanka. I believe Pikler said once that revolution starts on the nappy changing table. And I love that. And I think this simply, it really shows the power of the approach.
Yes, I just wanted to say that what you said about the conflict management and how you're trying to you're there to facilitate and moderate, right?
Yes.
But you're actually letting the children have a try at working things out. And this is so important at problem solving and conflict resolution. And I just see so many times when the adults intervene, they just, it's me. We mean well, right? It's a well-intended thing that adults try to step in and help out. But actually, I think it's also a fear of we need to fix this quickly because otherwise things might get out of control. We might, it's the sense of the adults trying to control and not having the time to slow down or the time to allow the children to resolve the conflict between themselves.
Yes, it is quite scary, right? Of letting go this assumption that everything has to be fixed quite quickly.
Yeah.
Move on with our day and finally get to the things that really matter. But as you said, this is what truly matters. I mean, day after day, these small moments over a period of time, this is what matters to a child.
Yes. So we really focused on how this approach can work in a childcare setting. And I was just wondering about how can parents implement these things at home? Are there any trainings specifically for parents, or how does it work in terms of bringing Pikler into our homes as well as the childcare settings?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And the good news is that you don't need to be Pikler trained to bring some of this spirit into your own home and to apply some of these principles. And while you could do the formal training, and this offers depth and guidance, and I highly recommend it. And in those courses, there are many parents actually as well. Some of them they're not teachers, they're parents there who want to learn more. But you can apply these principles at home simply by allowing or willing to slow down, observe, and connect with attention. So the first thing I would recommend is to slow down and be present. So just try to do less, but more slowly. And whether you're changing a nappy or helping your child get dressed or serving a snack, treat it as a moment of connection, not a task to rush through. So make sure you make eye contact, speak calmly and clearly, involve your child by telling them what you're doing and giving them time to respond. And avoid distractions if you can. Put the phone down, declutter the space around the nappy changing table. Allow the focus to be you and not what is around you. The second thing I would say is trust in your child's competence. In Pikler, we are reminded that babies are capable even from birth. And give your child time and space to try things on their own. This might mean that things become slower. Actually, definitely, it will mean they'll become slower. You need to that. And it will be messier and it won't be, very straightforward. But we need to do that so we can allow the child to learn and to be involved in this process and to unfold. A free movement is also a key. So we would recommend to avoid placing your baby in positions they can't get into themselves. So, for example, this could look like let your baby lie on a safe, flat surface, hard surface, with time and space to move freely. I would recommend to avoid walkers or baby jumpers that restrict natural movement, and overall trusting the child that they can learn by themselves to roll, sit, crawl, and walk when they're ready. Observation is also a key. So try simply watching your child for a few minutes or moments before you intervene. What are they trying to do? What are they interested in? And this helps you respond to their real needs, not what you think the needs are, your assumptions, but also would build your confidence up as a parent and would deepen your relationship with the child. In terms of the environment, I briefly mentioned earlier, it's important that the environment is uncluttered. We don't need many toys or fancy equipment.
True.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Like people hoard toys, and I've always wondered, is it serving any purpose? Just give them a spoon and a tumbler.
Yes.
And that's all you
My
need.
my kids used to love playing with cardboard boxes, and a cardboard box can be used for so many different things.
Yeah. I wish you had mentioned this earlier, Dilyana. We can go on and on about you do not need to buy a 100-pound toy that makes the sound of a robot. You really don't.
Those are the worst. Those are the worst, the most annoying ones as well.
Exactly. And isn't it funny how many parents say the same things, right? Cardboard boxes are such a valuable resource and often free.
Yes. And even the paper, the sound it makes, the crunching, wrapping papers.
Everything. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember we even, so my son used to use it for like putting things in it, and then he'd climb in there, and I actually, we put a string on it, and I would like pull him around
roll them on sledging, and
and then he was just chilling in there, and then he'd get out, and then it's so versatile, isn't it?
Yes, my favorite toy as a child, and I played with it really for hours and hours and hours, and I still remember it, was a basket, my mom's laundry basket, and I absolutely loved it. And it was my safe space at times, but I also used it in imaginary play later on. And yes, I didn't have that many toys, but I still remember how I played with this basket and how I played with my carpet in my room that had different colors, and I pretended that the colors were different things. So when you don't have that many toys, you are in a way not forced, but encouraged to use your own imagination. And there are studies, for those who are interested, that also demonstrate, and there is a very important study of a nursery in Germany which decided to get rid of the toys and what happened with the children. So for those who are interested, we could share a link to that study. But yes, absolutely, it's we don't need that many. We just need a few, but very carefully selected toys that invite open-ended play. So I would recommend things like wooden blocks, stacking cups, cloths, depending on the age of the child. Routines need to be simple but consistent. And we need to allow children to have this time for uninterrupted play without constant entertainment and interruption. So this would require some planning. And we need to think a little bit about this. In terms of how we speak to the child, as I said earlier, even babies need to know what's happening to them. So we can narrate what we're doing during the care routine. So we can say things like, I'm going to pick you up now. So here the tone is also important. The gestures and the way we would do that is also important. We can say things like, let's wipe your hands together. Are you ready for a nappy change? Would you like me to wait? Because it's not the most important thing to change a nappy right now, right? This is something we forget sometimes. And something that's to remind ourselves, we don't need to be perfect. And this is not a checklist. There is nothing to tick off. It's a way of being with the child. And this grows over time. So be gentle to yourself, start slowly. And even if you change a few things in your day-to-day life, it will have a meaningful impact.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
love
love
that you
that.
mentioned. I love that you mentioned this because I think that we parents can be very hard on ourselves. And if there's anyone out there feeling like, oh, my kid wasn't raised like this in the early years and feeling giving themselves a hard time, I'd urge you to let that go because we can't feel guilty about things that we didn't know, okay? And what I always tell parents is that the brain is plastic. So you can always retrain yourselves and give different approaches to your children, no matter how old they are. It's easier when they're younger, but we can still do it as adults. So
Yeah, I
mention
love it. I love the fact that Dilyana started the conversation by saying it's a way of self-discovery for the parent to let go of their preconceived notions. And I think that has been the unifying tone throughout the thing about how we talk to our children, what we think about their capabilities and how much ownership we give to them right from the very beginning. So we can go talking about this approach, I think, for days at length. There's so much to it. And Dilyana, you are there, you finished 4 courses and you're on to your 5th one. So that shows the depth of study that is required to understand it to its core. But unfortunately, we do have a limited time, and I am going to be the person carrying that bad news that we have a time limitation. We don't have, we can pause, but we definitely still have a milestone to finish of having this conversation. But what I would definitely like you to share with us before we end the conversation is I'm sure there are people and educators out there who would love to know more about this approach. So where can people go if they want to learn more about the Pikler approach? Of course, you practice in the UK, so one obvious thing would be how can people get involved with Pikler UK, but outside of the UK as well, if there are educators who want to get involved or know more about it, if you could share some resources for the audience, we'll of course put it in the YouTube caption as well for people to see it after the conversation ends. That would be very helpful for everybody.
Yes, and thank you for asking this. So let's start with the UK. The best place to start, I think, is the Pikler UK website. There you will find information about upcoming courses here in the UK, as well as details about our next conference. And I'm happy that I'm able to share the title of the conference. It will be called Born Ready, Listening to the Child and Rethinking the System. So don't miss out. This conference would be a really fantastic opportunity to hear from powerful voices in our sector, in the early childhood education, and to learn more about the approach in practice. It will take place on the 26th of September at Kingston University. And you can find further details in the links below this video, but also on the Pikler UK website. The website also includes information about books, articles, academic papers, and other useful resources that you might want to have a look at. A great way also to stay in touch is by signing up to our newsletter and becoming part of that growing community, which for me personally is very important. This is an international community, and it's not just based not just here in the UK, but all over the world, and I really mean that. In terms of courses, the source is obviously Budapest. So if you would like to go back to the source, go to Budapest and really learn from the pedagogues there. I don't think this is the most direct way to learn from the source, but there are also courses in Germany, and they have their own training program there. There are courses in actually in many places, and the pedagogues travel all around the world. I know that they've been to Asia and to Brazil and to other countries as well. So there are lots of opportunities. So if you want to hear and learn more about those opportunities for all over the world, go to the Hungarian website where they publish this, and then you'll find out a course that's closer to you. You can also follow us, the Pikler UK, on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. This could be also a good way to stay in touch, and we share some of these events so you can stay informed and become part of this network. And another website I would just mention is the Pikler Collection website, because it's also very full of information, lots and lots of information there as well.
Wonderful. We'll share all of these links in the show notes below. So Dilyana, excuse me, I just wanted to say a huge thank you for joining us today. This has been very insightful, and from listening to what you talked about the Pikler approach, there's so much overlap with the peaceful parenting approach. And it is all about respecting the child, and they're an individual, so we don't need to control them. So I just love that. So thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you again. Like, I think my children benefited from your work early on, so I'm lucky to have had that. And thank you for spreading this information elsewhere.
It really was my pleasure, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's been really lovely to talk to you both.
Yeah, thank you, Dilyana. I did not know much about the Pikler before we started this conversation, or rather when we decided to have you as a guest on our podcast. But since then, I've been reading more and more about it, and I think it's just so beautiful and so powerful. So thank you for shedding light on that as well. And I'm sure there will be other educators who will look forward to adopting this, because it's just that small tweak here and there, but with such a profound impact.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us on Nurturing Minds. We hope today's conversation gave you something to think about or try out in your own life.
If you enjoyed the episode, please follow or subscribe. Leave us a rating and share it with anyone who might find it helpful.
And if there's a topic you'd love us to explore, feel free to message us or leave a comment. We would love to hear from you.
Until next time, stay curious, connected, and kind.